Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened a Harem King, Bloodline and got married to Hinata, Ino, Sakura, and Tenten. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Crimson Awakening. The kunai whistled through the air, missing Naruto's ear by mere millimeters. He didn't flinch. At 21, the blonde shinobi had grown accustomed to near-death experiences, collecting them like some collected trading cards. He ducked behind a massive oak tree, pressing his back against rough bark as he caught his breath. 6 hostiles, maybe 7, he muttered, closing his eyes to better sense the chakra signatures surrounding them. Hinata, what do you see? Beside him, Hinata Hyuga activated her Byakugan, veins bulging around her pale eyes as she scanned their surroundings. Her navy hair was pulled back in a practical braid for the mission, though a few loose strands framed her face. 8 enemies, she whispered. 2 are concealing their chakra, I can barely detect them. They're using some kind of suppression technique I haven't seen before. Naruto nodded, trusting her vision implicitly. In the 3 years since the 4th Great Ninja War, they'd run dozens of missions together. Their teamwork had evolved into something approaching telepathy, a connection that went beyond words or hand signals. Formation C, he suggested, already knowing her answer. A slight smile touched her lips. Let's try Formation E. They won't expect it. Naruto grinned. This was why he loved running missions with Hinata. She'd grown bolder over the years, no long Jeer the shy girl who could barely speak in his presence. Now she challenged him, pushed him to be better. On your mark, he said, forming the familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen perfect copies of Naruto popped into existence, each wearing the same black and orange combat gear and the same determined expression. They scattered in different directions as planned, serving as both decoys and reconnaissance. Hinata touched his arm lightly. Be careful, something feels different about these attackers. Different how? Naruto asked, noticing the concern in her eyes. Their chakra has an unusual quality. Almost like a kunai embedded itself in the tree above them, interrupting her explanation. Attached to it was a paper bomb, its edges already curling with flame. Move. Naruto grabbed Hinata around the waist and leapt away just as the explosion tore through the forest, sending splinters and smoke in all directions. They landed in a small clearing, immediately taking defensive positions back to back. They're hurting us, Hinata observed, her Byakugan scanning the trees surrounding them. This was their plan all along. Through the eyes of his shadow clones, Naruto caught glimpses of their attackers, figures in dark gray uniforms with no village insignia, faces concealed behind plain masks with a single vertical red stripe down the center. Not Anbu from any village he recognized. One of his clones engaged an enemy, only to be dispelled by a technique Naruto had never seen before, a touch that seemed to disrupt chakra flow entirely, causing the clone to dissolve not with the usual puff of smoke but with a disturbing ripple, as though its very essence was being unmade. What the hell? Naruto muttered, the phantom sensation from his dispelled clone sending an uncomfortable shudder through him. They're closing in, Hinata warned, sliding into the gentle fist stance. 3 from the north, 2 from the east, and the rest are circling around to cut off our retreat, Naruto finished. His senses now picking up what Hinata had detected earlier. These aren't ordinary shinobi. As if to prove his point, the first attacker burst into the clearing, moving with unnatural speed. Naruto barely had time to raise his arm to block a strike that hit with enough force to crack bone. He winced but countered with a sweeping kick that his opponent jumped over with insulting ease. Uzumaki Naruto, the masked figure spoke, voice distorted as though passing through water. The Nine Tails Jinchuriki, hero of the Great War. Your bloodline ends today. My what? Naruto barely had time to question before 2 more attackers joined the fray, forcing him to create another wave of shadow clones to even the odds. Behind him, Hinata moved like water, her gentle fist strikes precisely targeting the chakra points of an attacker who seemed surprisingly knowledgeable about Hyuga techniques, dodging with practiced precision. They know our fighting styles, she called out, narrowly avoiding a counter that would have closed 3 of her own Tenketsu points. They've studied us. Naruto felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. These weren't random bandits or even missing nin looking to make a name for themselves. This was a coordinated attack by a group that had specifically targeted them, prepared for their techniques. Fall back to the river, he shouted. We need more space. They began fighting their way toward the sound of rushing water, but their attackers seemed to anticipate every move. For each one they managed to incapacitate, another appeared. Fresh and ready, it was like fighting shadows, relentless and unnervingly calm. One of the masked figures made a series of hand signs Naruto didn't recognize, and the ground beneath their feet began to shift and bubble like liquid. Earth style. Consuming soil technique. The clearing transformed into a sinkhole of churning earth that grabbed at their ankles. Naruto jumped clear, landing on the trunk of a tree and channeling chakra to stick to its surface. Hinata wasn't as fortunate. The technique had caught her mid-step, and the soil was already up to her knees, hardening rapidly. Hinata. Naruto created 3 clones that rushed to help her while he engaged the nearest attackers, buying time. Don't bother, one of the masked figures taunted as Naruto's clones struggled to pull Hinata free. That technique was specifically designed to trap those with Hyuga chakra signature. The more she struggles, the faster it hardens. Naruto's eyes narrowed. How would they now enough about Hyuga chakra to create such a specific technique? His momentary distraction cost him as another attacker landed a solid hit to his ribs, sending him flying into a tree trunk with a new force to knock the wind from his lungs. The attack had been coordinated to separate them. Now Hinata was trapped and surrounded by 4 of the masked figures, while the others focused on keeping Naruto at bay. We have no quarrel with the Hyuga, one of them said, approaching Hinata with what looked like a specialized sealing tag. Surrender the Uzumaki, and you may live. Hinata's response was immediate and fierce. I would die before betraying him. Despite being trapped up to her waist, she continued her gentle fist strikes, keeping her attackers at a distance. Naruto struggled to his feet, feeling a strange heat building in his chest. It wasn't Kurama's chakra. This was different, unfamiliar. For a moment, his vision swam with a crimson haze that had nothing to do with the Nine Tails' influence. Get away from her, he shouted, and his voice carried a power that made the masked figures pause. The leader tilted his head. It's beginning, he said, sounding almost satisfied. Just as the prophecy foretold. The bloodline awakens when the bond is threatened. He turned to the others. Change of plans. Kill the Hyuga, now. Time seemed to slow as Naruto saw one of the attackers drive. A blade that gleamed with an ominous purple light. Poisoned. They were going to kill Hinata, and he was too far away to reach her in time. His clones were being systematically destroyed by the strange chakra disrupting technique. Disappearing in that disturbing ripple effect rather than puffs of smoke. No, the heat in his chest exploded outward, and for a moment, Naruto thought he might have unconsciously tapped into Kurama's power. But the chakra flowing through him now wasn't orange, it was deep crimson, like freshly spilled blood. In an instant, he was across the clearing, moving faster than he ever had without Kurama's direct assistance. The masked figure's blade was inches from Hinata's throat when Naruto's fist connected with his chest, sending him flying through 3 trees before coming to rest, motionless against a boulder. Naruto, your eyes, Hinata gasped, staring up at him in shock. He had no time to question what she meant. The remaining attackers had regrouped and were now approaching more cautiously, forming hand signs in perfect unison. Sacred art. Divine purge. They chanted together. A wave of white energy surged toward them like a tsunami. Naruto instinctively placed himself between the attack and Hinata, crossing his arms to brace for impact. The strange crimson chakra responded to his protective instinct, flowing out from his body to form a translucent shield. When the white energy collided with his crimson shield, the resulting explosion shook the forest. Trees were uprooted, the ground cracked, and a shockwave flattened everything within a 100-meter radius. Through it all, Naruto remained standing, the crimson energy swirling around him like a living thing. But something unexpected happened as the energies collided. A thread of crimson light shot from Naruto's chest to Hinata's, connecting them for a brief, electric moment. He felt her. Not just her physical presence but her emotions, her thoughts, her very essence, as though they had momentarily become one being. The earthen prison trapping her legs crumbled to dust, freeing her instantly. The masked attackers froze, clearly not expecting this development. Impossible, their leader whispered. The Crimson Bond, it's supposed to be extinct. Naruto had no idea what the man was talking about, but he could feel a new power flowing between himself and Hinata, a connection that transcended the physical. When she moved to stand beside him, their chakra signatures synchronized perfectly, crimson energy flowing around both of them. We need to retreat, one of the masked figures urged their leader. If the bond has been established, we cannot defeat them here. Not with our current numbers. The leader hesitated, then nodded. This isn't over, Uzumaki. The divine purge cannot allow abominations like you to exist. Your bloodline is a corruption of the natural order. Before Naruto could respond, the attackers threw down smoke bombs and vanished, leaving behind only the body of their fallen comrade, and a forest clearing transformed into a blast crater. As the immediate danger passed, the crimson chakra receded, drawing back into Naruto and Hinata like water flowing into vessels. They stood in stunned silence for a moment, both trying to process what had just happened. Naruto, Hinata finally spoke, her voice unsteady. Your eyes were red, not like Kurama's influence, different. And I felt. She placed a hand over her heart. I felt you, inside me, like our souls touched. Naruto nodded slowly. I felt it too. It was like, for a moment, there was no difference between us. He looked down at his hands, expecting them to look different somehow, but they appeared normal. Yet he could still sense Hinata in a way he never had before, a warm presence at the edge of his consciousness. What did they mean about a bloodline? And what's the divine purge? Hinata asked, scanning the area to ensure their attackers had truly departed. I don't know, Naruto admitted. But they seemed to recognize what happened between us. Called it the Crimson Bond. Hinata's eyes widened. The Crimson Bond. I've heard that term before, in old Hyuga texts. It's supposed to be a myth, a legendary bloodline that died out centuries ago. Well, it feels pretty real to me, Naruto said, rolling his shoulders as if adjusting to a new weight. And those guys seemed pretty real too. We need to get back to Konoha and report this. Kakashi-sensei. I mean, Lord Sixth, needs to know about this divine purge group. Hinata nodded, but then swayed slightly on her feet. Naruto caught her before she could fall, alarmed to find her skin cool to the touch. Hinata, what's wrong? I'm okay, she assured him, though her voice was weak. Just drained. Whatever that connection did, it used a lot of chakra. Naruto frowned, suddenly aware that while he felt energized, almost buzzing with power, Hinata seemed to have been depleted by their connection. Another mystery to add to the growing list. Let's get you somewhere safe to rest, he decided, scooping her up despite her half-hearted protests. The mission can wait, you're more important. As he carried her through the forest, leaping from branch to branch with chakra-enhanced speed, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had just irrevocably changed. The strange crimson chakra, the connection he'd felt with Hinata, the mysterious attackers with their talk of bloodlines and purges, all of it pointed to something big. Something ancient awakening, and deep in his heart, a part of him that he hadn't known existed. Whispered that this was just the beginning. The village of Kyoko wasn't much to look at, a small collection of wooden buildings nestled in a valley about 40 kilometers from Konoha's borders. Its only notable feature was the natural hot springs that drew occasional travelers seeking healing waters. It was perfect for their needs, close enough to send a message to Konoha, but small enough that news traveled slowly. Naruto secured a room at the only inn, a modest 2-story building with a steaming onsen in the back. The elderly innkeeper had raised an eyebrow at their disheveled appearance, but asked no questions when Naruto placed extra ryo on the counter. Now Hinata sat on the edge of the futon, color slowly returning to her cheeks as she sipped the hot tea Naruto had prepared. She'd insisted she was feeling better after a few hours of rest, but Naruto couldn't help hovering, bringing her extra blankets and checking her temperature every few minutes. Naruto, I'm fine, she said gently, capturing his hand as he reached to feel her forehead for the third time. Really, my chakra is almost back to normal. He sighed, sitting beside her on the futon. I know, I've never seen you so drained before, and I can't help feeling it was my fault somehow. It wasn't your fault, she assured him. Whatever happened out there, it saved both our lives. She hesitated, then added, I can still feel you, you know. Like a warm presence in the back of my mind. Can you feel me too? Naruto nodded. Yeah, it's strange, but nice. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that hadn't changed since his genin days. I've never heard of a jutsu that creates this kind of connection. That's because it's not a jutsu, Hinata said thoughtfully. If what those attackers said is true, and this is the Crimson Bond, then it's a bloodline trait, something inherited, not learned. But that doesn't make sense, Naruto protested. I'm an Uzumaki, yeah, but I've never heard of anything like this in my clan's abilities. It's all been about sealing techniques and strong life forces. Hinata set down her tea and moved to the small pack she'd carried during their mission. From it, he withdrew a worn journal bound in faded red leather. What's that? Naruto asked, curious. My mother's journal, Hinata explained, her fingers tracing the cover reverently. After she died, my father gave it to me when I turned 16. He said it contained Hyuga knowledge that wasn't in the official clan records, things she wanted me to know someday. She carefully opened the journal, flipping through pages of elegant handwriting until she found what she was looking for. Here, she said, pointing to a passage. My mother wrote about ancient bloodlines that were thought to be extinct. The Crimson Bond was one of them. Naruto leaned closer, their shoulders touching as they read together. Among the lost bloodlines, perhaps none is more misunderstood than the Crimson Bond. Unlike the Sharingan or Byakugan, which manifests in physical form, the Crimson Bond is a spiritual inheritance that allows the bearer to form profound chakra connections with those they share a deep emotional bond with. Historical records suggest the last known carrier was Uzumaki Ashina, who lived nearly 2 centuries ago. The few reliable accounts describe Crimson Chakra that could connect souls, allowing partners to share strength, abilities, and even consciousness in times of need. What makes this bloodline unique is that it requires genuine emotional connection to activate. It cannot be forced or stolen like other Kekkei Genkai. Some texts claim the Crimson Bond was not merely an Uzumaki trait, but originated from an even more ancient lineage, perhaps dating back to the Sage of Six Paths himself. If true, this would explain why certain religious sects considered it sacrilegious, a mortal possessing what they believed to be divine power. Naruto sat back, trying to process this information. So you're saying I've inherited some ancient bloodline that lets me, what? Bond with people, Hinata nodded slowly. If the texts are correct, the Crimson Bond forms between individuals with strong emotional connections. It's said to amplify their natural abilities and create a permanent link between their chakra networks. But why now? Naruto wondered. We've been in danger plenty of times before. Why would it suddenly activate during this mission? Perhaps it has to do with maturity, Hinata suggested. Most bloodlines fully manifest in late adolescence or early adulthood. You turned 21 last month. Naruto remembered his birthday celebration, a small gathering with close friends at Ichiraku Ramen. Hinata had given him a hand-knitted scarf, reminiscent of the one her younger self had tried to give him years ago. The memory made his chest warm in a way that had nothing to do with chakra. Or maybe, Hinata continued, a slight blush coloring her cheeks, it has to do with the nature of our relationship changing. Naruto felt his own face heat up. They had been officially dating for nearly 2 years now, but their relationship had deepened considerably in recent months. There had been talk of marriage, not formal plans yet, but definite intentions. The thought that their growing love might have triggered an ancient bloodline was both romantic and slightly overwhelming. Those attackers, Naruto said, refocusing on the more immediate concern. They called themselves the Divine Purge, and they seemed to know exactly what was happening, even before we did. Hinata's expression grew serious. They said your bloodline was a corruption of the natural order. And they specifically targeted you. They were willing to let me go if I surrendered you. Which you weren't going to do. Naruto noted with a small smile. Never, she confirmed without hesitation. Her fierce loyalty still surprised him sometimes. The quiet girl who had watched him from afar had become a woman. And who would face death without blinking to protect him. We need to get back to Konoha, Naruto decided. If these Divine Purge people knew about this bloodline before I did, they might know more about what it means. And they clearly have some kind of religious objection to it. We should rest tonight and leave at first light, Hinata suggested. I'll be fully recovered by then. Naruto nodded, but a new thought occurred to him. Hinata, this connection between us. Do you think it's permanent? She considered the question, then placed her hand over her heart. It feels permanent, like a part of you is inside me now, and a part of me is in you. She smiled. It doesn't feel wrong, though. It feels like something that was always meant to be. Her words resonated with something deep inside him. Despite the danger they'd faced, despite the unsettling implications of being targeted by a mysterious organization, this new bond with Hinata felt right. Natural, as though some missing piece had finally clicked into place. Yeah, he agreed, taking her hand. It does feel that way. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, adjusting to the new awareness of each other that hummed between them like a plucked string. Then Naruto's stomach growled loudly, breaking the mood and making Hinata laugh. Some things never change, she said affectionately. Let's get some food. I saw a small restaurant across the street. You should rest. Naruto began, but she was already standing. I've been resting all afternoon, she pointed out. And I'm hungry too. Besides, we should be seen around the village acting normally. If those attackers are tracking us, I don't want them to know we're concerned. Naruto couldn't argue with her logic, or her determined expression. All right, but we eat quickly and come straight back. And if you start feeling tired again, we leave immediately. She nodded in agreement, and they prepared to venture out into the small village. As Naruto waited for Hinata to change into the spare clothes from her pack, he caught his reflection in a small mirror hanging on the wall. For a brief moment, he could have sworn his eyes flashed crimson, not the slitted red of Kurama's influence, but a deeper, richer shade that seemed to glow from within. He blinked, and his eyes were blue again. Crimson bond, he murmured, testing the words. Whatever this bloodline was, whatever it meant for his future. One thing was certain. Life was about to get a lot more complicated. The small restaurant was crowded despite the late hour, filled with locals unwinding aft. A day's work and the occasional traveler passing through. Naruto and Hinata found a table in the corner, where they could observe the room while keeping their backs to the wall, a habit ingrained in all shinobi. I sent one of my shadow clones to deliver a message to Konoha, Naruto said quietly as they waited for their food. It should reach Kakashi-sensei by morning. Hinata nodded. Good. I've been thinking about those attackers. Their techniques were unusual. The way they disrupted my shadow clones, Naruto agreed. It wasn't like any chakra disruption I've seen before. And that jutsu they used at the end, the divine purge thing, that wasn't a standard elemental technique. It felt old, Hinata said, struggling to find the right word. Like something from another time. And did you notice their masks? The single red stripe reminded me of descriptions of ancient priests, not shinobi. Their conversation paused as the server brought their food, a simple but aromatic meal of grilled fish, rice, and vegetables. Naruto realized he was ravenous, the day's exertions catching up with him. As they ate, he found himself unusually aware of Hinata's presence across the table. He'd always been attuned to her in the way people are with those they love, but this was different. He could almost feel her chakra flowing through her body, could sense her emotions without needing to read her expressions. It was intimate in a way that transcended physical closeness. Can you feel it too? He asked softly. This awareness, she nodded. It's stronger when we're physically near each other. I can tell you're worried but trying not to show it. A small smile curved her lips. And very hungry. Naruto chuckled. That's not the bond, that's just me being a bad actor. Always have been. He took another bite of fish, chewing thoughtfully. Do you think this bond might let us use each other's abilities? Like, could I use gentle fist techniques? Or could you create shadow clones? I don't know, Hinata admitted. My mother's journal didn't go into that much detail. But it did mention partners sharing strengths. She hesitated, then added, there's something else. The Jorn. Al mentioned that the Crimson Bond wasn't limited to just two people. Naruto nearly choked on his rice. What? The last known carrier, Uzumaki Ashina, reportedly formed bonds with 3 partners, she explained. Her voice carefully neutral. The text suggested that each bond was unique, bringing different strengths to the collective. Oh, Naruto wasn't sure what else to say. The implication had he might form similar bonds with others hadn't occurred to him. The idea felt complicated. As that, I mean, how do you feel about that possibility? Hinata took her time answering, her eyes thoughtful. I think, she finally said, that we don't know enough yet to worry about it. This bond formed between us because of what we already share. If others might someday share in it too, well, we'll face that when and if it happens. Her measured response surprised him. The Hinata of a few years ago might have been insecure about such a prospect, but the woman sitting across from him now exuded a quiet confidence. She knew her place in his heart was secure, bond or no bond. You're amazing, you know that, he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. As their fingers touched, a subtle pulse of crimson chakra flickered between them, visible only to their eyes. The connection between them hummed like a perfectly tuned instrument, and for a moment, Naruto could actually feel Hinata's love for him as though it were a tangible thing, warm and steadfast and boundless. The moment was broken by the restaurant door slamming open. A young man staggered in, clothes torn and face streaked with dirt and blood. Help, he gasped, collapsing to his knees. Bandits, attacking the North Road. They've set fire to the merchant caravan. The villagers erupted in panic and confusion. T's small settlement had no shinobi of its own, no formal protection beyond a few locals with basic combat training who served as a makeshift militia. Naruto and Hinata exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. It could be a trap. The divine purge might have staged this to draw them out. But if innocent people were truly in danger, we can't ignore it, Hinata said, already rising from her seat. No, we can't, Naruto agreed, but we stay together, no matter what. They approached the injured messenger, who looked up at them with desperate hope as Naruto crouched beside him. We're shinobi from Konoha, he explained. Tell us exactly what happened and where. Thank the gods, the man breathed. About 3 kilometers north, where the road crosses the river. At least 20 bandits attacked a merchant convoy. They have hostages, women and children. Our village guard tried to help but they were outmatched. We'll handle it, Naruto assured him, standing. To the gathered villagers, he added. Prepare for injured people. We'll bring them here once it's safe. Outside, the night air was crisp with early autumn. Naruto created a shadow clone to stay behind and help organize the villagers while he and Hinata took to the trees, moving with the swift efficiency that came from years of training. If it is a trap, Naruto said as they ran, we should be ready to use the bond if necessary. Hinata nodded, her Byakugan already activated and scanning ahead. I see the fire, she reported after a moment. And multiple chakra signatures. Some are civilian, weak and frightened. Others are definitely combatants, but, she frowned. Their chakra looks strange. Strange how? Similar to those masked attackers, but not identical. Less refined. She focused harder. Naruto. I think they might be using some form of chakra enhancement. Their networks show signs of artificial stimulation. That didn't sound like typical bandits. Naruto's suspicions grew, but they couldn't turn back now. As they approached the scene, the smell of smoke grew stronger, and they could hear screams and the clash of metal. They paused on a high branch overlooking the road. Below, 3 wagons were ablaze, illuminating a chaotic scene. Men in ragged clothing were fighting with crude weapons, but moved with unnatural speed and strength. Terrified merchants huddled behind an overturned cart while what appeared to be the village militia tried desperately to hold off the attackers. Those aren't ordinary bandits, Naruto observed. Look at how they're moving, too coordinated. Hinata nodded. And their chakra, it's been altered somehow, almost like a drug effect. Whatever's happening, those civilians need help now, Naruto decided. I'll create a diversion with my clones. You get the hostages to safety. Be careful, Hinata warned. If these are connected to the divine purge somehow. I know. No unnecessary risks. He formed the hand sign for his signature technique. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of Naruto clones appeared, immediately dropping to the road below and engaging the attackers. The real Naruto and Hinata used the distraction to circle around toward the frightened merchants. As they moved closer, Naruto noticed something odd. The bandits weren't trying to steal goods or take valuables. They seemed focused solely on causing destruction and terror. And when his clones engaged them, the attackers exhibited a berserk fighting style, completely unconcerned with their own safety. One of them took a direct hit from a clone's Rasengan, a blow that should have incapacitated any normal human. Instead, the man laughed, a chilling, unnatural sound, and continued fighting despite the grievous wound in his abdomen. "Hinata," Naruto called, "there's something very wrong here." She was already beside the hostages, using her gentle fist to disable two attackers who had been guarding them. "Get to the village," she instructed the terrified merchants. "Follow the road south. There are people waiting to help you." As the civilians fled, one of the apparent bandits noticed and let out an inhuman howl. "The vessels. They're escaping." His voice had the same watery distortion they'd heard from the masked attackers earlier. "Vessels," Naruto repeated, a chill running down his spine. These weren't random attacks. The merchants had been specifically targeted. One of the attackers abandoned his fight with Naruto's clones and charged toward the fleeing civilians. Naruto intercepted him, blocking a wild swing from what looked like a farming scythe modified into a battle weapon. Up close, he could see the man's eyes, completely black, with no whites or iris, and weeping a dark substance that streaked his face like tears. "What the hell happened to you?" Naruto demanded, struggling against the man's unnatural strength. "The divine will purify all bloodlines," the man rasped, his breath smelling of rotten metal. "Your kind has defiled the natural order for too long. The old ways return." He broke away from Naruto with surprising agility and formed unfamiliar hand signs. Blood offering technique. To Naruto's horror, the man plunged his own hand into his chest, pulling out what appeared to be his still beating heart. Instead of dying, he crushed the organ in his fist, and his body began to transform, limbs elongating, skin hardening into a chitinous shell, mouth widening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Similar transformations were happening throughout the battlefield as the attackers performed the same gruesome ritual. These weren't bandits at all. They were sacrifices, vessels for something much more sinister. "Hinata," Naruto shouted, "fall back. These aren't human anymore." She was already retreating, having witnessed the horrific transformations through her Byakugan. "Their chakra is completely corrupted," she reported, her voice steady despite the grotesque scene. "It's like their bodies are being controlled by an external force." The transformed creatures, no longer even remotely human, moved with predatory coordination, attempting to surround them. Naruto's shadow clones were being dispatched with disturbing ease, each one torn apart by claws and fangs. "We need to end this quickly," Naruto decided. Since the war, he'd been reluctant to rely too heavily on Kurama's power, preferring to solve problems with his own strength when possible. But this situation called for overwhelming force. He reached within, connecting to the familiar presence of the Nine Tails. Kurama, I need your help. The ancient fox stirred within him. These creatures smell of old magic, Naruto. Darker and older than even I remember clearly. Be cautious. Naruto felt the familiar surge of Kurama's chakra, golden energy enveloping him as he entered his tailed beast mode. The transformation was seamless now, a perfect partnership rather than the struggle it had once been. What he didn't expect was the reaction from his newly awakened bloodline. As Kurama's chakra flowed through him, the crimson energy of the bond flared in response, the two forces swirling together in a dance of gold and crimson. "Naruto, your chakra," Hinata gasped, her Byakugan allowing her to see the unprecedented merger of energies. He felt the connection between them pulse, and suddenly Hinata was surrounded by a thin layer of the same golden crimson chakra. Her eyes widening in surprise as new power flooded through her. The transformed creatures hesitated, their distorted faces showing something like fear for the first time. "The Crimson King," one of them hissed. "It's happening again. He must not be allowed to complete the circle." They attacked with renewed desperation, but they were no match for Naruto and Hinata in their enhanced state. Moving with perfect synchronization, they tore through the creatures' ranks. Naruto's Rasenshuriken, now swirling with both golden and crimson chakra, cut through three attackers at once. Hinata's gentle fist strikes, amplified by the shared power, could now disable opponents from several meters away, her chakra extending like whips of golden crimson light. Within minutes, the battle was over. The transformed creatures lay defeated, their bodies rapidly deteriorating into a black, tar-like substance that seeped into the ground. As the immediate danger passed, the shared chakra receded. Hinata swayed slightly, and Naruto was at her side in an instant, supporting her. That was intense, she breathed, leaning against him. I could feel Kurama's chakra flowing through me. And I could see through your eyes. Just for a moment, Naruto was equally shaken by the experience. The Crimson Bond had not only survived contact with Kurama's chakra but had somehow harmonized with it, allowing Hinata to temporarily share in his Jinchuriki powers. Are you okay? He asked, scanning her for injuries. Yes, just processing. She looked around at the black residue that was all that remained of their enemies. Naruto, they called you the Crimson King. And they mentioned completing the circle. What do you think that means? I don't know, he admitted. But I'm starting to think this Divine Purge group knows a lot more about this bloodline than we do. And they're terrified of it for some reason. They checked the burning wagons to ensure no one had been left behind, then began making their way back to the village. Both lost in thought. The attack had raised far more questions than it had answered. The vessels are escaping, Hinata recalled suddenly. That's what one of them said when the merchants were fleeing. Do you think they were after specific people among the caravan? Maybe, Naruto agreed. We should question the survivors, see if anyone stands out or knows why they might have been targeted. As they approached the village, they could see people gathered at the edge, waiting anxiously for news. The merchants they'd rescued had arrived safely and were being tended to. Naruto's shadow clone dissipated as they approached, transferring its knowledge to him. The villagers have organized medical care, he informed Hinata. And they've sent word to neighboring settlements to be on guard. An elderly woman stepped forward as they entered the village, her weathered face solemn. You saved many lives tonight, she said. We are in your debt. We're just glad we could help, Naruto responded. But we need to speak with the merchants who were attacked. It's important. The old woman nodded, leading them to the village's small meeting hall where the survivors were gathered. Inside, about 20 people sat on benches or floor mats, many being treated for minor injuries. They looked up as Naruto and Hinata entered, expressions ranging from gratitude to lingering fear. Is anyone missing? Naruto asked. We need to know if anyone was taken during the attack. A middle-aged man with a merchant's guild insignia on his coat stood. I was leading the caravan. We've accounted for everyone except. His face darkened. There was a family traveling with us from the land of rivers. A mother and her twin daughters. They disappeared during the initial attack, before you arrived. Hinata and Naruto exchanged a concerned glance. Can you describe them? Hinata asked. The mother's name was Amaya, the merchant replied. The girls were about 8 years old. They kept to themselves mostly. Joined our caravan about a week ago. Paid well to travel with us for protection. He hesitated. There was something strange about the children. Their eyes, they changed color sometimes. In certain lights, they would look almost crimson. Naruto felt his blood run cold. Did they say where they were headed? Konoha, the merchant confirmed. The woman said yes. He had family there who could protect them. She seemed frightened, always looking over her shoulder. I assumed they were running from an abusive husband or some such trouble. Or from the Divine Purge, Hinata murmured. Too quietly for anyone but Naruto to hear. Thank you for the information, Naruto told the merchant. Rest here tonight. We'll make sure the road is safe before you continue your journey. Outside, away from curious ears, they discussed this new development. Children with eyes that turn crimson, Naruto said. That can't be a coincidence. The attackers weren't after the merchants at all, Hinata agreed. They were hunting that family. And if the mother was taking them to Konoha for protection, she might have been looking for me specifically, Naruto finished. If her daughters have the same bloodline, the implications were staggering. If there were others with the Crimson Bond, others being hunted by this Divine Purge organization, then what they'd stumbled into was much bigger than a random attack. This was a systematic purge of a bloodline, his bloodline. We need to get back to Konoha immediately, Hinata said. If that family was taken, they could be in grave danger. Naruto nodded grimly. We'll leave at first light. And we need to be prepared for more attacks. The Divine Purge knows we're here now. As if to punctuate his words, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the night sky. Though there wasn't a cloud to be seen. An omen, perhaps, of the storm that was coming, a storm centered around an ancient bloodline that Naruto had never known he carried. And the mysterious organization determined to eradicate it from the world. In the quiet village street, under a sky full of stars, Naruto took Hinata's hand, drawing strength from their connection. Whatever came next, they would face it together, bound by something deeper than even they understood. Dawn broke with a heavy mist clinging to the valley, shrouding the village in ethereal white. Naruto stood on the inn's small balcony, watching the sun struggle to pierce the fog. He hadn't slept much, his mind too full of questions and concerns. The door slid open behind him, and Hinata joined him. Dressed and ready for travel. The innkeeper says the mist is unusual for this time of year, she said quietly. It appeared suddenly during the night. Unnatural, Naruto agreed, his eyes scanning the obscured landscape. I can sense chakra in it. Very faint, but it's there. Someone's watching us. Hinata activated her Byakugan, looking through the mist. I don't see anyone within my range, she reported. But the mist itself has a chakra signature. It's like a sensory barrier. They're trying to blind us, Naruto concluded. Or trap us. Either way, we need to move. Now. He had packed their few belongings earlier, anticipating a quick departure. With one last look around the small room that had sheltered them, they moved silently downstairs. The innkeeper was nowhere to be seen. The common room empty despite the hour when breakfast would normally be served. Too quiet, Hinata whispered. Naruto nodded, creating a shadow clone that went ahead to check outside. The moment it stepped through the doorway, Naruto felt a jolt of alarm through their shared consciousness before the clone was violently dispelled. Ambush, he confirmed. The whole village is probably under some kind of genjutsu. That's why no one's around. Hinata's expression hardened. We can't leave the villagers like this. If the divine purge is here, I know, Naruto agreed. But we need to be smart about this. My clones can search for villagers while we deal with whoever's creating this mist. With a sequence of hand signs, Naruto created 20 shadow clones that immediately scattered throughout the inn and surrounding buildings. Through their eyes, he caught glimpses of sleeping villagers, not dead, thankfully, but in a deep, unnatural slumber. They're alive, he reported to Hinata. Some kind of sleep technique. My clones will gather them somewhere safe. She nodded, relieved but still tense. The chakra in this mist is concentrated from the north, the same direction as last night's attack. They moved cautiously outside, where the mist was so thick they could barely see 10 feet ahead. Normal fog would have presented no challenge to Hinata's Byakugan, but this chakra infu. Said mist created a hazy interference that limited even her exceptional vision. Stay close, Naruto said, unnecessarily. They were already moving in perfect tandem, their newly formed bond allowing the to sense each other's position and intentions with uncanny precision. They had made it halfway through the village when Naruto felt a disturbance in the air, the subtle shift that signaled an incoming attack. Without a word, both he and Hinata jumped in opposite directions as a massive blade cleaved through the space where they had been standing. The weapon was unlike anything Naruto had seen before. A curved sword nearly 6 feet long that seemed to be made of the same black, chitinous material as the transformed creatures from the night before. Wielding it was a figure in the now familiar gray uniform with a red striped mask. But this one was larger, more imposing than the others they had encountered. Uzumaki Naruto, the masked figure intoned, voice resonating with unnatural depth. And his first vessel, the beginning of corruption. Who are you? Naruto demanded, circling cautiously. What do you want? I am Kahai, first blade of the divine purge. The massive sword shifted in his grip, seeming almost alive. What I want is irrelevant. The will of the divine is all that matters. And the divine has decreed that abominations like you must be cleansed from this world. Where are the woman and her daughters? Hinata asked, her stance low and ready. The ones you took from the caravan. A sound emerged from behind the mask that might have been laughter. So you know of the other vessels. It is too late. Their corruption has been purified. As yours will be. Fury rose in Naruto's chest at the implication. You killed children. Because of a bloodline they didn't choose. Not killed, Kahai corrected. The mask tilting slightly. purified, returned to the natural order. As all things must be. He raised the massive blade. Your bloodline is an affront to the divine. The power to bind souls was never meant for mortals. He moved with shocking speed for someone his size, the blade whistling through the air with deadly precision. Naruto dodged, feeling the wind of its passing against his face. Hinata circled around, looking for an opening to strike. Your friend Kakashi will not receive your message, Kahai informed them as he continued his relentless attack. We have agents in Konoha. Your clone never made it past our perimeter. This was bad news. If they couldn't get word to Konoha, no one would know what had happened if they fell here. And worse, if the Div-In Purge had infiltrated the hidden leaf itself. You're lying, Naruto said, though he feared it might be true. Konoha's security wouldn't let unknown agents in. Unknown. Kahai laughed again, that disturbing, watery sound. We have been preparing for generations, Uzumaki. Our agents are born in the very villages they infiltrate, raised from childhood to serve the divine will. They are your neighbors, your comrades, your friends. The thought was chilling, but Naruto couldn't let himself be distracted. He created 3 shadow clones that attacked from different angles, forcing Kahai to defend rather than press his offensive. Hinata seized the opportunity, closing in with her gentle fist. Her strike landed squarely on Kahai's back, targeting the chakra points that should have disabled him instantly. Instead, he seemed barely affected, twisting with inhuman flexibility to swing his blade at her. She barely managed to leap back in time, the edge of the weapon catching her sleeve and tearing the fabric. Conventional techniques will not work on me, Hyuga, Kahai said. I have transcended the limitations of chakra networks. Naruto noticed something strange then, when Hinata had struck him. There had been no flare of chakra disruption as there should have been with a successful gentle fist hit. It was as though Kahai's chakra system was fundamentally different from a normal human's. Hinata, he called. His chakra. I see it, she confirmed, her Byakugan focused intently on their opponent. It's not flowing through pathways like normal. It's diffuse, spread throughout his entire body like a web. Kahai made another impossibly fast strike, this time connecting with one of Naruto's shadow clones, which dissolved with that unsettling ripple effect rather than the usual puff of smoke. Your pathetic duplicates cannot help you here, the masked man stated. In this mist, my power is absolute. As if to demonstrate, he plunged his free hand into the fog, and the mist seemed to condense around his fingers, forming what looked like Senbon needles of solid white. With a flick of his wrist, he sent them hurtling toward Naruto and Hinata. They dodged, but the Senbon changed direction in midair, pursuing them with unnerving intelligence. One grazed Naruto's arm, and he felt an immediate numbing effect, his chakra sluggish around the small wound. Poison, he muttered, shaking his arm to restore circulation. Purification, Kahai corrected. It severs the connection between body and corrupted chakra. In a normal human, it would do nothing. In an abomination like you, it begins the cleansing process. Naruto could feel the foreign substance trying to spread through his system, but Kurama's chakra was already neutralizing it, burning it away before it could take hold. The fox's protective instincts had always made Naruto resistant to poisons, and this, purification, seemed no different. But Hinata didn't have that protection. If those Senbon hit her, we need to end this quickly, he told her, their bond allowing him to communicate his concern without elaborating. She nodded, understanding perfectly. The mist, it's his power source. Naruto formed the hand signs for a wind technique. Wind style. Gale palm. He clapped his hands together, creating a powerful gust that momentarily cleared a path through the mist. In that brief window of clarity, he saw them. Small paper tags placed throughout the village, each emitting the chakra-infused fog. A sealing technique, but not one he recognized. The tags, he shouted to Hinata, who had seen them as well through her Byakugan. Perceptive, Kahai acknowledged, but knowing the source of my technique won't save you. He made a single hand sign, and the mist thickened again, obscuring everything. Then something unexpected happened. The crimson chakra of the bond, which had been quietly humming between Naruto and Hinata since its awakening, suddenly pulsed stronger. Naruto felt a warm surge through his body, and when he looked at Hinata, he could see her perfectly despite the mist, a crimson outline highlighting her form. From her surprised expression, she could see him the same way. The bond, she whispered. It's adapting. They didn't need to discuss strategy, the bond allowed them to understand each other's intentions instantly. Hinata would target the ceiling tags while Naruto kept Kahai occupied. 8 trigrams air palm, Hinata called, sending focused blasts of chakra toward the nearest tags. When her technique connected, the tags burst into flame, and portions of the mist began to dissipate. Kahai roared in anger, abandoning his measured attacks for a frenzied assault on Hinata. You will not interfere with sacred techniques, vessel. Naruto intercepted him, his body wreathed in the golden chakra of Kurama's power. Your fight is with me. Their clash sent shockwaves through the mist, momentarily clearing it with the force of their colliding chakra. Kahai's massive blade met the chakra arms Naruto had extended, neither giving ground. You don't even understand what you are, Kahai hissed. What you will become if allowed to complete the circle. The Crimson Bond is the first step toward the return of powers that would remake this world. We cannot allow it. I don't care about remaking the world, Naruto shot back, pushing harder. I care about protecting the people I love. If this bloodline helps me do that, then I'll use it. Kahai made a sound of disgust. Such limited vision. The Crimson Kings of old sought to reshape reality itself, to bridge the gap between mortal and divine. Would you claim you have no such ambition? That absolute power would not corrupt you as it did them. Naruto didn't have an answer. He knew nothing about these Crimson Kings, or what they had done in the past. But he knew himself, knew his own heart. I'm not them, he said simply. I'm me, Uzumaki Naruto, and I decide my own path. Their deadlock broke as Hinata destroyed another ceiling tag, causing Kahai to falter momentarily. Naruto pressed his advantage, landing a solid hit that cracked the red striped mask. A piece fell away, revealing not skin but what appeared to be the same black, chitinous material they had seen in the transformed attackers the night before. Kahai's visible eye was completely black, weeping the same dark substance. You're like those others, Naruto realized. You transformed yourself with that blood ritual. Not like them, Kahai corrected, his voice taking on a strange, dual quality. They were mere vessels, temporary hosts. I am a true disciple. One with the divine will. He touched the broken portion of his mask. This form is but a shell for something greater. More ceiling tags were destroyed as Hinata systematically moved through the village. And the mist was noticeably thinning. Kahai seemed to realize his advantage was slipping away. This is merely the beginning, Uzumaki, he said, suddenly backing away. The RGE has waited centuries for the Crimson Bond to resurface. We will not be thwarted by a single battle. You're not going anywhere, Naruto declared, gathering chakra for a Rasengan. Not after what you did to that family. Kahai made a series of hand signs too fast to follow, then plunged his massive blade into the ground. Blood harvest technique. The earth beneath the entire village began to tremble, and to Naruto's horror, crimson lines spread outward from the blade-like veins, snaking toward each sleeping villager. Stop, Naruto shouted, abandoning his attack to intercept the nearest bloodline before it could reach an unconscious child lying in the street where his clone had placed him. A choice, Uzumaki, Kahai called, his broken mask revealing a grotesque smile. Pursue me, or save these insignificant lives. You cannot do both. It wasn't even a choice. Naruto immediately created dozens of shadow clones that raced to protect the sleeping villagers while Hinata destroyed the remaining ceiling tags, fully dispersing the mist. By the time they had neutralized the blood technique, a horrifying jutsu that would have drained the villagers' life force, Kahai was gone, leaving on Lee his massive blade embedded in the village square, a grim reminder of how close they had come to disaster. The villagers were beginning to stir as the effects of the sleep technique wore off. They old have no memory of what had transpired, no understanding of how near they had come to death. Perhaps that was a mercy. Naruto and Hinata stood before the blade, both breathing hard from exertion. We need to seal this, Naruto said, eyeing the weapon warily. It's still connected to him somehow. Hinata nodded. I can see residual chakra flowing through it. It's feeding information back to him. Using techniques he had learned from his Uzumaki heritage, Naruto created a containment seal, carefully wrapping the blade without touching it directly. Once sealed, the malevolent energy emanating from the weapon subsided, though Naruto could still feel its presence, like a dormant predator. "We can't stay here," Hinata said, looking around at the awakening village. The divine purge could return in greater numbers, and these people would be caught in the crossfire again. Naruto agreed. "We need to get to Konoha as fast as possible, and we need to be ready for anything. If they really do have agents in the village." Quote. The implications were troubling. If the divine purge had infiltrated Konoha, nowhere was truly safe. And if they had been watching for the Crimson Bond to resurface for generations, then this conflict was much older and deeper than they had initially realized. As they prepared to leave, gathering their packs and making sure the villagers were safe, Naruto couldn't shake Kahai's words from his mind. The Crimson Kings of old. The power to reshape reality. Completing the circle. None of it made sense yet, but one thing was clear: this bloodline he had Akand carried a history and a burden he was only beginning to comprehend. He looked at Hinata, feeling the warm pulse of their bond, and found strength in her unwavering presence. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And when they reached Konoha, they would find answers, about the divine purge, about the missing family, about the Crimson Bond itself. The journey ahead would be dangerous. But Naruto had never run from danger in his life. Especially not when the people he loved were threatened. He took Hinata's hand, and together they set out toward home, leaving the small village behind as the sun finally broke through the last wisps of unnatural mist. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Bonds of Loyalty. The gates of Konoha rose before them, bathed in afternoon sunlight. After 3 days of hard travel, taking circuitous routes and false trails to shake any potential pursuers, Naruto and Hinata had finally reached home. The familiar sight of the massive wooden doors flanked by eternal vigilant Chunin brought a measure of relief, though both remained on high alert. "Something feels different," Naruto murmured as they approached. The bond between them had grown more refined during their journey, allowing them to communicate impressions and feelings with increasing clarity. He knew Hinata sensed it too. A subtle wrongness in the village's chakra signature. "Keep your Byakugan inactive for now," he suggested quietly. "If they do have agents here, we don't want to tip them off that we're suspicious." Hinata nodded, her face composed in the serene expression that revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. Only Naruto, connected to her through their bond, could feel her coiled tension, ready to spring at the first sign of danger. The guards straightened as they approached, recognizing them immediately. "Naruto," Hinata called Kotetsu with a casual wave. "You're back early. Mission go smoothly." "Smooth enough," Naruto replied with a practiced grin, revealing nothing of their ordeal. "As Kakashi-sensei, I mean, is Lord Sixth in the office? We need to report directly to him." Kotetsu exchanged a quick glance with his partner Izumo before answering. "He should be. Bin bus. Why with preparations for the 5-Cage Summit next month." "Thanks," Naruto said, already moving through the gates. Once past the checkpoint, he whispered to Hinata, "Did you notice that?" The hesitation. She confirmed. Yes, and their chakra flickered when they mentioned Lord Sixth. It was subtle, something they might not have noticed if they weren't specifically looking for signs of infiltration. But after Kahai's warning about agents in the village, every anomaly seemed significant. They moved through Konoha's streets with casual purpose, maintaining a relaxed exterior while remaining hypervigilant. The village appeared normal. Shopkeepers calling out their wares, children playing in side streets, off-duty shinobi gathering at food stalls, but both Naruto and Hinata catalogued a dozen nor discrepancies that might have been nothing, or might have been everything. 2 Anbu operatives crossing a rooftop who paused a heartbeat too long when they spotted them. A civilian woman whose and moved to her sleeve when they passed, where a concealed weapon might be hidden. A group of genin practicing in a training ground who fell completely silent mid-exercise as they walked by. "We're being watched," Hinata whispered, her lips barely moving. "I know," Naruto replied, casually draping his arm over her shoulder in a gesture that looked affectionate but positioned him to better protect her if needed. "Let's take the scenic route." They deliberately meandered, taking side streets and doubling back occasionally. To anyone observing, they might have appeared to be simply enjoying a leisurely walk through the village. But in reality, They were executing a standard counter-surveillance pattern taught to all Konoha Jonin. After 20 minutes of this, Naruto was certain they had Iden. To find at least 3 different people tracking their movements. None wore anything identifying them as Divine Purge members, but their movements were too coordinated to be coincidental. We need a diversion, he decided. When they passed a busy intersection, he created a shadow clone that continued walking with Hinata while he himself slipped away into an alley, using a transformation jutsu as Sume, the appearance of a nondescript villager. From this vantage, he confirmed his suspicions. 2 of the watchers followed his clone and Hinata, while a third hung back, apparently communicating with someone via a small radio device concealed in their ear. This wasn't standard Konoha security. Something was definitely wrong. Moving quickly, Naruto circled around to intercept Hinata and his clone in a secluded courtyard near the Hokage Tower. When they arrived, he dispelled the clone and dropped his transformation. 3 trackers, possibly more, he reported. One was communicating with someone. We can't go directly to Kakashi, we might lead them straight to him. Hinata nodded. We need someone we can trust absolutely. Someone who can get a message to Lord Sixth without attracting attention. They exchanged a look, both arriving at the same conclusion simultaneously. Shikamaru, they said in unison. As Kakashi's right hand and chief advisor, Shikamaru Nara had direct access to the Hokage at all times. More importantly, his genius-level intellect and strategic mind made him one of the few people who could help them navigate this complex situation. He should be in the administration building this time of day, Hinata said. But how do we reach him without being seen? Naruto's eyes gleamed with mischief, a reminder of his prankster days. The old emergency tunnels. Entry point 7 is behind the academy, and it connects directly to the administration complex basement. Hinata raised an eyebrow. How exactly do you know about restricted access tunnels? Let's just say I didn't spend all my academy days in class. Naruto replied with a wink. Those tunnels saved me from Iruka-sensei more times than I can count. They made their way to the academy, timing their movement between patrols. The school day was in full swing, providing excellent cover as they slipped behind the building to a nondescript maintenance shed. Inside, Naruto moved directly to a floor panel partially hidden beneath gardening equipment. Help me with this, he whispered, and together they lifted the heavy wooden panel to reveal a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. I've never seen these tunnels on any official map, Hinata remarked as they carefully replaced the panel above them and descended the stairs. They were built during the Second Shinobi War as emergency evacuation routes, Naruto explained, creating a small Rasengan to illuminate the passageway. After the war, most were officially sealed, but a few were kept operational for the Hokage and Anbu. The rest were, well, forgotten. By everyone except you, apparently, Hinata said with a small smile. Naruto shrugged. When you spend half your childhood running from angry Chunin instructors, you learn all the best hiding places. The tunnel was narrow but well constructed, its stone walls carved with fading seals that Naruto recognized as barrier and preservation jutsu. Despite decades of disuse, the air was surprisingly fresh, suggesting the ventilation systems still functioned. They walked for nearly 10 minutes, following turns and intersections with Naruto leading confidently. Finally, they reached a ladder built into the wall, leading up to another panel. Administration building basement, Naruto whispered. Storage room B7, if I remember correctly. Should be deserted this time of day. He embed the ladder and pushed gently on the panel. It resisted at first, then gave way with a soft grinding sound. Naruto winced at the noise, but a quick peek confirmed the room was indeed empty, just helves of archived scrolls and office supplies gathering dust. They emerged from the tunnel, carefully replacing the floor panel, and paused to get their bearings. Shikamaru's office is on the 3rd floor, East Wing, Hinata said. Having visited the administration building frequently for Hyuga clan business. Naruto nodded. Let's avoid the main stairs and elevators. Service stairwell should be this way. They moved cautiously through the basement hallways, encountering no one until they reached the service stairs. As they climbed, the building's normal sounds became audible: conversations, footsteps, the rustling of papers and scrolls. The mundane activities of village administration continued, oblivious to the potential threat that had infiltrated their ranks. On the third floor, they paused again, listening carefully. The corridor ahead led to Shikamaru's office, but voices were approaching from around the corner. Still no word from the border patrols, someone was saying. Lord Sixth is concerned. The intelligence division is working on it, replied a second voice that Naruto recognized as Shikamaru's. But something doesn't add up. These disappearances aren't random. The footsteps were coming closer. Naruto and Hinata exchanged a quick glance, then stepped boldly into the corridor, directly into the path of Shikamaru and a Chunin Naruto didn't recognize. Shikamaru's EYs widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise from the perpetually languid Nara. Naruto, Hinata, didn't expect you back for another week. His tone was casual, but his eyes sharpened, reading their tense postures instantly. Mission parameters changed, Naruto replied with equal casualness. Need to discuss the details with you. In private, Shikamaru's gaze flickered briefly to his companion, then back to Naruto. Sure, I was just heading back to my office. Tuma, we'll continue this later. The Chunin bowed slightly. Of course, Shikamaru-san. He departed down the corridor, but N.O.T. before giving Naruto and Hinata a lingering look that set Naruto's instincts on edge. Once inside Shikamaru's office, a surprisingly tidy space dominated by a shogi board in the corner, Naruto immediately activated a privacy seal. One of the specialized techniques he'd learned during his Jonin training. That bad, huh? Shikamaru commented, leaning against his desk with arms crossed. What trouble, have you gotten yourself into this time? In concise terms, Naruto and Hinata took turns explaining everything that had happened. The attack during their mission, the awakening of the Crimson Bond, he encounter with Kahai and the Divine Purge, and their suspicions about infiltrators within Konoha. Shikamaru listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly serious. When they finished, he remained silent for a long moment, clearly processing the information with his characteristic thoroughness. Troublesome, he finally said, the understated word carrying the weight of serious concern coming from him. Very troublesome. You're certain about the connection between your new ability and these attackers? They specifically called it the Crimson Bond, Hinata confirmed. He seemed to have extensive knowledge about it, more than we do. And you believe they've infiltrated Konoha? Shikamaru's tone wasn't doubting, merely clarifying. Naruto nodded. We were tracked from the moment we entered the village. And Kahai claimed they have agents who were born and raised here, specifically placed to monitor for the reappearance of this bloodline. Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his temples. Long-term sleeper agents are not outside the realm of possibility. After the war, security protocols were relaxed to accommodate reconstruction and improved international relations. He straightened. We need to inform Lord Sixth immediately, but discreetly. If there are Divine Purge agents within the village, they may have access to standard communication channels. That's why we came to you first, Naruto said. Good call. Shikamaru moved to a seemingly ordinary bookshelf and pressed a hidden switch. A small section slid open, revealing a secure messaging system. This is a direct line to the Hokage's office. Bypassing the regular channels. Wait here. He composed a brief message on a specialized scroll, applied his personal seal, and inserted it into the device. Moments later, a soft chime indicated a response. Kakashi will meet us in the secure conference room below his office, Shikamaru reported. There's a direct passage from here, another one of those tunnels you seem to know so much about. He added with a knowing look at Naruto. The hidden passage from Shikamaru's office was considerably more modern than the one they'd used earlier, well lit and clearly maintained regularly. It led them directly to a reinforced door with multiple ceiling arrays that Shikamaru deactivated with practiced ease. Inside the conference room, Kakashi was already waiting, his masked face as unreadable as ever. Despite having taken the position of Hokage years ago, he still wore his customary mask and his silver hair remained perpetually disheveled. The only real difference was the formal Hokage robe draped over his shoulders. Naruto, Hinata, he greeted them with a casual wave that belied the seriousness of the situation. Sounds like your routine border patrol turned into something considerably more interesting. For the second time, they recounted their experience. Kakashi listened attentively, occasionally asking for clarification on specific points. When they mentioned the Crimson Bond, his visible eye narrowed slightly. I've heard that term before, he said when they finished. During my Anbu days, I came across references to it in some restricted historical archives. It was always in the context of ancient legends, nothing concrete. It feels pretty concrete to me, Naruto said, unconsciously placing a hand over his heart where the crimson chakra seemed to originate. I don't doubt that, Kakashi assured him. Legends often have basis in fact, particularly where bloodlines are concerned. He turned to Hinata. You mentioned your mother's Jorna. Elle had some information about this ability. Hinata nodded, retrieving the worn red journal from her pack and passing it to the Hokage. The entries are somewhat cryptic, but they suggest the Crimson Bond was a closely guarded secret even within the clans that knew of its existence. Kakashi scanned the pages Hinata indicated, his expression thoughtful. This matches what I remember from the archives. There were rumors of an Uzumaki ability that went beyond their renowned sealing techniques and life force, but details were deliberately obscured. He looked up at Naruto. Your clan had many rivals and enemies. Even before Uzushiyogakure's destruction, it would make sense that they'd conceal their most powerful abilities. But what exactly is it? Naruto asked, frustration evident in his voice. All we know is that it creates some kind of bond, shares chakra, and apparently scares this divine purge group enough that they're willing to kill children to prevent it. Knowledge is our first priority, Kakashi decided. Returning the journal to Hinata. Shikamaru, I want you to access the restricted archives, Section 4, Historical Bloodlines. Use my direct authorization, and contact the archivists in Suna. They preserved some Uzumaki scrolls after Uzushiogakure fell. Shikamaru nodded, already making mental notes. Next, security, Kakashi continued. If the Divine Purge has indeed infiltrated Konoha, we need to identify their agents without alerting them. Naruto, did you recognize any of the people tracking you? One was definitely Anbu, Naruto confirmed. The others looked like ordinary Chunin or civilians, but moved like trained operatives. Infiltrating Anbu would be extremely difficult, Shikamaru observed. Their identity verification protocols are the strictest in the village. Unless the infiltration happened years ago, Hinata suggested. If what Kahai said is true, and they've been placing agents for generations. The implication hung heavily in the room. An organization with the patience and resources to embed operatives decades in advance was a truly formidable enemy. We need to be selective about who knows of this situation, Kakashi decided. Shikamaru, Naruto, Hinata, you three are now Task Force Crimson. Official records will show you're preparing for the upcoming 5-Cage Summit. In reality, you'll be investigating the Divine Purge and researching the Crimson Bond. What about the village elders? Shikamaru asked. Protocol requires informing them of potential security breaches. Kakashi's eye crinkled in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. I'll handle the elders. Their need to know will be carefully managed. His tone suggested he wasn't looking forward to the conversation. The village council, composed primarily of elders who had served since the third Hokage's time, were notoriously difficult to deal with, especially where Naruto was concerned. There's one more thing, Naruto said hesitantly. The merchant at the village mentioned a woman and twin daughters who were taken during the attack. The girls supposedly had eyes that sometimes appeared crimson. Kahai implied they were purified. He couldn't keep the disgust from his voice at the euphemism for murder. Kakashi's expression darkened. I'll have Intelligence Division look into recent movements of families matching that description. If there are others with this bloodline, they may be in danger as well. Or they might have information we need, Hinata added. Precisely. Kakashi moved to a secure cabinet and removed 3 specialized communication devices. These are encrypted channels, developed by the research division. Use them to contact each other if necessary, but keep communication to a minimum. We don't know how extensive the Divine Purge's information network might be. Quote, as they prepared to leave through separate exits to avoid being seen together, Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. One more thing. This bond you've formed with Hinata, be careful. Any new ability comes with risks and limitations you may not yet understand. Naruto nodded seriously. I know. We're still figuring it out. Good. Kakashi's eye crinkled again. And congratulations. By the way, awakening a new bloodline is quite an achievement, even for Konoha's most unpredictable ninja. Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto couldn't help but grin at his former sensei's characteristic blend of wisdom and levity. The Konoha Central Hospital bustled with its usual controlled chaos. Medical ninja hurried through corridors, civilian doctors consulted charts, and patients waited in varying states of patience for their turn with a healer. In the midst of this organized frenzy, Sakura Haruno moved with confident efficiency, her pink hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her white medic's coat pristine despite the day's challenges. At 21, Sakura had established herself as one of Konoha's premier medical ninja, second only to Tsunade herself. After the war, she had dedicated herself to improving the village's medical infrastructure, developing new treatment protocols and training programs that had saved countless lives. Today had been particularly demanding. 3 back-to-back surgeries to remove fragments of an exploding tag from a team of Chunin caught in an ambush near the border. The precision required had been exhausting. But all 3 would make full recoveries. Sakura-san, a nurse called, hurrying to catch up with her. The patient in room 412 is asking for you specifically. Sakura suppressed a sigh. She had been looking forward to a brief break, but duty called. What's their condition? Fever, chakra depletion, and some unusual symptoms the attending medic couldn't identify, the nurse reported, handing her a chart. The patient insisted on seeing you personally. Glancing at the chart, Sakura noted the patient had been admitted only an hour ago. No name was listed. Just, patient 412, suggesting either an Anbu operative or someone under protection protocols. I'll see them now, she decided, changing direction toward the isolation wing where room 412 was located. As she walked, Sakura reviewed the sparse medical notes. The symptoms described were indeed unusual. Chakra depletion combined with elevated body temperature was common enough, but the notes mentioned chakra pathway irregularity, and intermittent visual changes that didn't correspond to any standard condition. Room 412 was at the end of a quiet corridor, separated from the general patient areas. A standard security seal glowed faintly on the door, indicating privacy protocols were in effect. Sakura pressed her palm against it, allowing her chakra signature to be recognized before entering. The room was dimly lit, with privacy curtains drawn around the single bed. Sakura approached cautiously, her medical senses already probing for information about the patient's condition. Hello, I'm Drive, Haruno. I understand you asked to see me. The curtain moved slightly, and a soft voice responded. Thank you for coming, Sakura-san. Something about the voice raised Sakura's internal alarms. She drew the curtain back slowly, revealing a woman perhaps in her mid-30s, with long dark hair and striking features. But it was her eyes that caught Sakura's attention, dark brown, but with unmistakable flecks of crimson that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. My name is Amaya, the woman said weakly. I apologize for the secrecy, but I was told you could be trusted. That you're a friend of Uzumaki Naruto. Sakura's guard instantly went up, though she maintained her professional demeanor. I am. How do you know Naruto? I don't, not personally. Amaya struggled to sit up, and Sakura automatically moved to help her, medical training overriding caution. But I know of him. Like me, he carries the blood legacy. Blood legacy, Sakura repeated, her diagnostic jutsu already scanning the woman's chakra network. What she found was unlike anything she'd seen before. The chakra pathways were normal in structure but contained 2 distinct types of energy, standard blue chakra intertwined with threads of crimson that pulsed like living things. The crimson bond, Amaya clarified, an ancient bloodline thought extinct. Until recently, she clutched Sakura's hand suddenly, her grip surprisingly strong despite her apparent weakness. My daughters, I need to know if they're safe. Your daughters. Sakura gently extracted her hand, continuing her medical assessment while processing this strange encounter. I'm sorry, but I don't have any information about. They were taken, Amaya interrupted, desperation in her voice. 2 days ago, on the road to Konoha. Men in masks with red stripes. The divine purge. Her eyes widened as another pulse of crimson flashed through them. They'll purify them if I don't find them soon. Please. Naruto is the only one who can help. He's awakened the bond, I can sense it. Sakura's mind raced. This woman was clearly in distress, but her story was fantastic. Yet the unusual chakra pattern couldn't be faked. Something extraordinary was happening in her system. How did you escape if your daughters were taken? Sakura asked carefully. I didn't escape, Amaya said bitterly. They let me go. A message to others like us, a warning. She pulled aside her hospital gown to rev. An intricate seal burned into her chest directly over her heart. They severed my bond with my daughters and marked me as cleansed. It's killing me, but slowly. They want me to suffer as an example. Sakura examined the seal with growing alarm. It was like nothing in her extensive medical knowledge, a complex array of symbols that seemed to be actively suppressing the woman's chakra network while simultaneously introducing a foreign energy that was essentially poisoning her system. This is, Sakura began, then refocused. I need to remove this seal immediately. And I need to contact Naruto. There's no time, Amaya insisted, gripping Sakura's arm again. The divine purge is already here, in Konoha. I was followed. They'll come for me, and for anyone who helps me. Her eyes met Sakura's, desperation giving way to resolve. I didn't come for healing. I came to warn Naruto, and to give him something that might help him understand what he's becoming. From beneath her pillow, she drew a small crystal vial containing what appeared to be blood, but it glowed with an inner crimson light. My family has safeguarded this for generations. Blood of the last Crimson King, preserved through special jutsu. It contains memories, knowledge that Naruto will need. Sakura hesitated to take it. I should call security. Get proper protection for Yuen. You can't trust anyone right now, Amaya interrupted. The divine purge has eyes and ears everywhere. Take this to Naruto, only to him. She pressed the vial into Sakura's hand and closed the younger woman's fingers around it. Promise me. Before Sakura could respond, the lights in the room flickered and then died completely, plunging them into darkness. Emergency seals activated automatically, casting an eerie blue glow around the perimeter. They're here, Amaya whispered, terror and resignation mingling in her voice. You must go, now. Sakura's combat instincts kicked in. I'm not leaving you defenseless. You don't understand, Amaya insisted. I'm already dead. The seal ensures that, but that vial must reach Naruto, or everything is lost. The door to the room burst open, revealing two figures in hospital staff. Uniforms, but their chakra signatures were wrong, distorted in a way that immediately set Sakura's nerves on edge. Haruno Sakura, one of them stated flatly. Step away from the vessel. This matter does not concern you. Hospital security will be here any minute, Sakura said calmly, shifting into a defensive stance between them and Amaya. I suggest you leave while you can. The intruders exchanged a glance. Security has been delayed, and we have no quarrel with you, drive. Haruno, our business is with the corrupted one. Anyone threatening my patient has a quarrel with me, Sakura replied. Channeling chakra to her fists in preparation for her signature earth-shattering strikes. The lead intruder sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. Then you leave us no choice. He made a hand sign Sakura didn't recognize. And both intruders' appearances seemed to ripple, revealing the now familiar gray uniforms and red striped masks beneath the disguises. Sakura didn't wait for them to attack. She struck first, her chakra-enhanced fist aimed at the floor between them. The resulting impact shattered the tiles and buckled the concrete beneath, forcing the intruders to leap back to avoid the fissure that opened at their feet. Medical emergency in room 412. She shouted, knowing the hospital's security protocols would activate at the specific phrase, regardless of whether anyone actually heard her. One of the masked figures drew a short blade that gleamed with an oily sheen. The corrupted blood must be purified, he intoned. Stand aside or share her fate. I don't think so, Sakura countered, already calculating escape routes. The window behind her was sealed for patient safety, but with enough force. The attackers moved with coordinated precision, one engaging Sakura directly while the other circled toward Amaya. Sakura blocked the first attacker's blade with a chakra-reinforced forearm guard, the special material of her medic's uniform absorbing the impact without tearing. She countered with a swift kick that connected solidly with her opponent's ribs, sending him flying into the corridor. The second attacker had reached Amaya, who was struggling to rise from the bed. One hand pressed to the seal on her chest which now glowed an angry red. No, Sakura lunged toward them, but the first attacker had recovered impossibly quickly and caught her ankle, pulling her off balance. Amaya locked eyes with Sakura one last time. "Find Naruto," she gasped, as the second attacker pressed a hand wreathed in strange white energy to her forehead. "Save my daughters." The white energy flared blindingly bright. And when Sakura's vision cleared, Amaya lay motionless, her eyes open but unseeing, the flecks of crimson fading from her irises. Rage and grief surged through Sakura. Using a substitution technique with a nearby chair, she positioned herself directly behind the attacker who had killed Amaya and delivered a devastating blow to his spine. The impact sent him crashing through the window, reinforced glass shattering outward. The remaining attacker cursed and moved to engage her again, but distant shouts indicated hospital security was finally responding. He hesitated, then made a decision. "This isn't over, Haruno. The vessel's warning means nothing. The Crimson Bond will be erased from this world." He formed a series of hand signs, then dissolved into white mist that dissipated through the broken window. Sakura rushed to Amaya, already knowing what she would find but unable to suppress her healer's instincts. A quick diagnostic confirmed her fears. The woman was dead. Her chakra network completely collapsed. The seal on her chest had burned away, leaving only scarred flesh in an intricate pattern. Security personnel burst into the room, led by a senior medical ninja Sakura recognized. "Dr. Haruno, what happened?" he demanded, taking in the destruction and the body on the bed. Sakura's mind worked quickly. If Amaya was right about Divine Purge infiltrators in Konoha, she couldn't trust the standard protocols. She needed to get the vial to Naruto immediately. "Assassins," she said tersely. "They targeted the patient. I was unable to save her." She kept her explanation deliberately vague. "I need to report this directly to the Hokage. Secure the room." Full Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was the highest security containment procedure, said only in cases involving potential biological or chakra contamination. It would effectively seal the room and restrict access to only the highest level medical personnel, buying her time to find Naruto. The senior medic nodded, already initiating the sealing procedures. "Are you injured, Drive?" "Haruno, nothing serious." Sakura concealed the vial in her medic's coat. "I'll have someone look at it after I report to Lord Sixth." She left before any more questions could be asked, moving through the hospital corridors with purposeful strides that discouraged interruption. Her mind raced. A woman had just died after warning of infiltrators and speaking of a bloodline connected to Naruto. The crystal vial felt heavy in her pocket, its importance literally sealed in blood. Outside the hospital, the late afternoon sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across Konoha's streets. Sakura hesitated, unsure of where to find Naruto. His apartment was the obvious choice, but if he was being monitored by these Divine Purge operatives, going there directly might lead them straight to him. She opted for a more indirect approach, heading toward Ichiraku Ramen. Old man Chuki and his daughter Ayame were among Naruto's oldest supporters in the village. If anyone knew where to find him, they would. As she walked, Sakura maintained a casual pace while keeping acute awareness of her surroundings. Years of training under Tsunade had honed her senses to detect the subtle signs of being followed, and right now, those senses were screaming warnings. Someone was shadowing her movements, someone skilled enough to remain just at the edge of detection. She took a deliberately wrong turn down an alley, then another, working her way through a convoluted path that would reveal whether she was truly being followed. When she emerged onto a quiet side street, her suspicions were confirmed. A figure in civilian clothes who had been in her peripheral vision for the last several minutes appeared again. Too consistently to be coincidence. Sakura ducked into a shop, pretending to examine goods while watching the reflection in the window. The follower paused outside, apparently debating whether to enter. It was a woman, nondescript in appearance, but her posture betrayed shinobi training. Making a split-second decision, Sakura moved deeper into the shop, nodded politely to the surprised shopkeeper, and slipped out the back door into another alley. Once there, she channeled chakra to her feet and scaled the wall to the rooftop, a common travel route for Konoha shinobi. From this vantage, she had a better view of the village and could move more quickly without civilian obstacles. More importantly, she could spot anyone following her more easily. To her dismay, when she looked back, not one but 3 figures had taken to the rooftops in pursuit. They had abandoned all pretense of stealth now, moving with the fluid grace of trained operatives. This was no longer a matter of finding Naruto. She needed to evade capture first. Sakura set off at full speed, leaping from rooftop to rooftop in the general direction of the Hokage Tower. If she could reach Kakashi, she would at least have high-level backup. Her pursuers were fast, but Sakura hadn't trained with Tsunade for years without learning a few tricks. At a junction between buildings, she dropped a smoke bomb. N used an Earth-style technique to create a false trail of footprints continuing straight while she veered sharply left. The maneuver bought her precious seconds, but her pursuers quickly adapted, lighting up to cover multiple potential routes. Sakura cursed under her breath. These weren't ordinary trackers, they moved with the coordination of a specialized hunting unit. She was considering her increasingly limited options when a flash of orange caught her eye. On a parallel rooftop, moving in the same direction, was an unmistakable figure in a black and orange jacket. Naruto, she called out, relief flooding through her. He turned, blue eyes widening in surprise, then immediately altered course to intercept her. Sakura-chan, what's? His expression shifted as he spotted her pursuers. Are those? No time to explain, she cut him off. We need cover, now. Understanding immediately, Naruto formed his signature hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of clones popped into existence, creating instant chaos as they scattered in all directions. Under this cover, the real Naruto grabbed Sakura's arm and pulled her into the shadow of a water tower. This way, he whispered, leading her to a maintenance hatch that opened into the building below. They dropped through, finding themselves in an empty apartment. Whose place is this? Sakura asked as Naruto secured the hatch behind them. Mine, he replied with a small grin. Well, my new one. Just moved in last week. Most people still think I live in the old apartment across town. Clever, Sakura thought. The old Naruto would never have thought of such security precautions. The war had changed them all. What's going on? Naruto asked, his expression serious now. Those weren't regular Konoha shinobi chasing you. Divine Purge, Sakura confirmed, watching his eyes widen in recognition. So you know about them already. How do you know about them? He countered. Sakura reached into her pocket and withdrew the crystal vial. A woman named Amaya came to the hospital today. She gave me this for you, said it was connected to something called the Crimson Bond. Then 2 Divine Purge agents killed her right in front of me. Naruto's face paled. Amaya, was she with 2 young girls? Twins. She said her daughters had been taken, Sakura confirmed. Naruto, what's going on? What is this Crimson Bond, and why are these people killing for it? Naruto ran a hand through his spiky blonde hair, a gesture Sakura recognized from their genin days when he was deeply troubled. It's complicated, and apparently more dangerous than I realized. He took the vial from her, examining the glowing crimson contents. Did she say what this is? Blood of the last Crimson King, according to her. Preserved with some special jutsu. Shish. He said it contains memories and knowledge you'll need. Naruto stared at the vial with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Kakashi-sensei and Shikamaru are researching the Crimson Bond now. This might help them understand it better. Quote, Naruto, Sakura said firmly, I just watched a woman die. I was chased across half the village. I think I deserve an explanation. He met her gaze, and Sakura was struck by something different in his blue eyes, a depth that hadn't been there before, or perhaps a new awareness that made him seem older somehow. You're right, he agreed. But first, where's Hinata? Is she with you? No, I haven't seen her. I was hoping to find both of you. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, in what appeared to be concentration. A moment later, he relaxed slightly. She's safe, with Shikamaru at the archives. He must have seen Sakura's confusion, because he added, I can sense her now. It's part of the bond. What bond? Sakura pressed, her patience wearing thin. Naruto sighed. During our last mission, I awakened something, a bloodline ability that apparently runs in the Uzumaki clan. It's called the Crimson Bond. It creates a connection between people, allows them to share chakra and abilities. And Hinata? Sakura asked, already guessing the answer. She was the first, Naruto confirmed. When she was in danger, the bond formed between us. We're still learning what it means, what it can do. Sakura processed this information, her analytical mind already connecting dots. And the divine purge wants to stop this ability. Why? They believe it's unnatural, sacrilegious, they called it. Power that mortals shouldn't possess. Naruto's expression darkened. They're willing to kill children to prevent it from spreading. Amaya's daughters, Sakura murmured, remembering the woman's desperate plea. Probably carriers of the same bloodline, Naruto nodded. We think the divine purge has been hunting down anyone with the potential to awaken the crimson bond for generations. A sudden commotion outside interrupted their conversation, shouts and the distinctive sounds of combat. Naruto moved to the window, cautiously peering through the blinds. They found us. But those aren't the ones chasing you earlier, these are wearing the masks. Sakura joined him at the window. In the street below, 4 figures in the now familiar gray uniforms with red striped masks were engaged in combat with what appeared to be Konoha Anbu operatives. But something was wrong. The Anbu were moving strangely, almost mechanically, and their attacks seemed coordinated with masked figures rather than against them. Those aren't real Anbu, Naruto said grimly. They're working with the divine purge. Infiltrators, Sakura realized. Just like Amaya warned. We need to get out of here, Naruto decided. They're creating a perimeter. Standard capture formation. As he spoke, more figures appeared on neighboring rooftops, some in Anbu gear, others in regular Konoha shinobi uniforms. But all moving with the same unnatural coordination. They were being surrounded. Can you contact Hinata through your bond? Sakura asked. Let her and Shikamaru know what's happening. I can try, Naruto said, closing his eyes again. The bond lets us sense each other's presence and some basic feelings, but detailed communication is still difficult. While he concentrated, Sakura assessed their options. The apartment had only one main exit plus the roof access they'd used. Both would likely be watched now. The windows offered a potential escape route, but the street below was where most of the enemy forces were gathered. Anything? She asked when Naruto opened his eyes again. She knows something's wrong, he replied. I could feel her alarm. Hopefully she and Shikamaru will alert Kakashi. So we're on our own for now. Sakura flexed her fingers, channeling chakra in preparation for what was coming. Any ideas? Naruto's expression shifted to one she knew well, the determined look he got when forming one of his unconventional but often effective plans. They want me because of the Crimson Bond. You're just a complication to them. Thanks, Sakura said dryly. No, I mean, they don't care about you specifically. You're just in the way. His eyes lit up as the plan took shape. So let's use that. I'll create a distraction with my clones, draw them away. You take the vial to Kakashi-sensei. Sakura frowned. And leave you to face all of them alone. Not happening. I'm not planning to fight them all, Naruto assured her. Just keep them busy long enough for you to get clear. Then I'll use Kurama's chakra to break through their perimeter. It wasn't a bad plan, given their limited options. But something about it didn't sit right with Sakura. Why not use the Nine Tails chakra right away? We could both escape immediately. Naruto hesitated. The Crimson Bond. It interacts with Kurama's chakra in ways we don't fully understand yet. Last time, it created a combined energy that was powerful but unpredictable. In the middle of the village, it might be too dangerous. Sakura nodded, understanding his caution. Post-war Naruto was more conscious of collateral damage than his younger self had been. All right, she agreed. But be careful. These aren't ordinary enemies. When am I ever not careful? He asked with a flash of his old grin. Sakura rolled her eyes. Do you want the list chronologically or alphabetically? They moved to the apartment door, listening for movement in the hallway beyond. Hearing nothing, Naruto created a shadow clone. E-clone will lead you through the back service corridor, he explained. It connects to the next building over, which should be outside their immediate perimeter. And I'll go out the front door. Make it nice and obvious. His expression sobered. Sakura-chan, if anything happens to me, make sure Hinata gets that vial. And tell her. He paused, seeming to search for words. Tell her I am sorry I didn't listen to her about taking the scenic route home. The simple message clearly carried deeper meaning, and Sakura nodded, tucking the vial securely into an inner pocket of her medic's coat. Ready? Naruto asked. On her nod, he flung the door open and immediately created a dozen shadow clones that charged down the hallway toward the main exit, creating maximum chaos. The real Naruto was among them. Indistinguishable from the others, Sakura and the remaining clones slipped in the opposite direction, toward a service door partially hidden behind a storage cabinet. They had made it halfway down the back corridor when sounds of combat erupted from the building's main entrance. Naruto's distraction was working. The clone led her to a maintenance access point that, as promised, connected to the adjacent building's basement. They moved silently through the dimly lit space, alert for any sign of pursuit. Almost clear, the clone whispered as they approached a stairwell that would lead up to street level. Once we're out, head straight for the Hokage Tower. Don't stop for anything. Sakura nodded, grateful for the clone's guidance but increasingly worried about the real Naruto. Through their bond, Hinata might be able to sense if he was in serious danger, but Sakura had no such connection. She had to trust in his abilities and focus on her own mission. They had just reached the stairwell when the clone suddenly stiffened, its expression changing to one of shock. Something's wrong, it said urgently. The boss is. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke before it could finish. The abrupt dispelling suggesting Naruto had encountered unexpected trouble. Cursing under her breath, Sakura raced up the stairs. Protocol said she should continue to the Hokage Tower with the vial. That was the mission Naruto had entrusted to her. But every instinct screamed that her teammate needed help. She emerged onto a side street 2 buildings away from Naruto's apartment. The sounds of battle were more distant now, suggesting the confrontation had moved. Following the noise, Sakura worked her way around the block, keeping to shadows and alleyways to avoid detection. The scene she found made her blood run cold. In a small plaza, Naruto was surrounded by at least a dozen Divine Purge operatives, some in their distinctive masks, others disguised as Konoha shinobi. More Alar. Ming was Naruto's condition. He was on one knee, blood streaming from a wound in his side, and what appeared to be white energy cords binding his arms. A tall figure stood before him, clearly the leader. Distinguished by a mask with 3 red stripes instead of 1. The Crimson Bond carrier. Subdued at last, he said, voice distorted in that same watery way Amaya's killers had spoken. Your interference ends here, Uzumaki. Despite his obvious pain, Naruto managed a defiant grin. Pretty sure I've heard that before. Never seems to stick. The leader struck him across the face. Your arrogance is typical of your bloodline. The Crimson Kings of old believed themselves above natural law, above even the gods. Their corruption nearly destroyed the world once. We will not allow it to happen again. You keep talking about these Crimson Kings, Naruto said, spitting blood. But you never explain what they actually did that was so terrible. You will understand soon enough. When we extract the corruption from your blood, you will be shown the truth before your purification. The leader made a hand sign, and the white energy cords tightened, drawing a pained gasp from Naruto. Sakura had seen enough. Medical analysis told her Naruto's wound was serious but not immediately life-threatening. The white energy restraints were more concerning. They appeared to be suppressing his chakra, preventing him from accessing Kurama's power or creating more shadow clones. She needed a plan. Rushing in against superior numbers would likely result in her capture as well. But she couldn't simply leave Naruto to these fanatics. The vial in her pocket felt heavier, a reminder of her original mission. An idea formed. Risky, but potentially effective. These Divine Purge members were obsessed with the Crimson Bond and purifying those who carried it. If she could convince them she had already taken preventative measures with the vial's contents. Decision made, Sakura stepped boldly from her hiding place. Let him go, she called. Her voice steady and authoritative, the same tone she used to command medical teams in crisis. All eyes turned to her, including Naruto's, which widened in alarm. Sakura. No, get out of here. The leader tilted his masked head. Dr. Haruno. How convenient. Save us the trouble of hunting you down after we're finished here. I've already taken precautions, Sakura said, improvising rapidly. The vial Amaya gave me, I've analyzed its contents and distributed the information to secure locations throughout the village. If anything happens to either of us, that information goes public. It was a bluff, but one based on enough truth to be convincing. The leader's posture stiffened slightly, suggesting uncertainty. What information? He demanded. Everything, Sakura replied coolly. The Divine Purge's operations, the names of your infiltrators in Konoha, and most importantly, the true purpose of your organization. The leader laughed, though there was an edge to it now. You're lying. You couldn't have deciphered the blood memories so quickly. I'm the Hokage's apprentice and Konoha's leading medical researcher, Sakura countered. You really think I sue? Didn't extract information from a simple preserved blood sample. She took a calculated risk. I know about the original sin. About what the Divine was really trying to prevent. It was a shot in the dark. Based solely on their religious-sounding rhetoric, but the leader's reaction told her she'd struck something significant. He actually took a step back. Impossible, he breathed. That knowledge was purged from all records. Sakura pressed her advantage. Release Naruto, and I'll ensure the information remains contained. Continue with your purification, and every hidden village will know your secrets by morning. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the leader made a sharp gesture, and two of his operatives broke away to approach Sakura. Bring her, he ordered. We will verify her claims before proceeding. As they neared her, Sakura maintained her composed facade while gauging distances and positions. The moment the first operative was within range, she struck, not with her usual chakra-enhanced strength, but with a precise medical technique that targeted nerve clusters. The man collapsed instantly, his body paralyzed. The second operative barely had time to register what had happened before Sakura's foot connected with his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs and sending him crashing into two others who had started forward. Sakura, run! Naruto shouted, struggling against his bonds with renewed vigor. But Sakura had committed to her course. Using the momentary confusion, she charged directly toward the leader, weaving between attacks with the grace that came from years of dodging Tsunade's punishing training regimen. The leader was prepared for her, however, meeting her charge with surprising speed. His hand lashed out, fingers stiffened in a strike aimed at her throat. Sakura deflected it with her forearm, countering with a chakra-enhanced punch that would have shattered stone. He twisted, taking the blow on his shoulder instead of his chest. Even so, the impact sent him skidding backward several feet, the mask cracking further. Impressive, he acknowledged, but futile. Before Sakura could press her attack, three more operatives surrounded her, forcing her on the defensive. She fought with everything she had, each strike precisely calculated for maximum effect with minimal chakra expenditure, a fighting style she had developed specifically for situations where she might need to conserve energy for healing later. But there were too many, and they moved with unnatural coordination, anticipating her techniques as if they had fought her before. A blow to her kidney staggered her momentarily, and in that instant, one of them managed to clasp a thin bracelet around her wrist. The effect was immediate. Her chakra, which had been flowing smoothly through her network, suddenly felt sluggish and unresponsive. A chakra suppressor, more sophisticated than any she'd encountered before. Chakra restraints won't stop me, she growled, transiti, owning to pure physical combat techniques. Tsunade had insisted she learn to fight without chakra enhancement, a lesson Sakura was now profoundly grateful for. She managed to incapacitate one more oper. A tiv before a second restraint was snapped onto her other wrist, and the combined effect brought her to her knees, gasping as the devices interfered with her body's natural energy flow. The leader approached, looming over her. Your defiance is admirable, drive. Haruno. But ultimately meaningless. He gestured to his remaining operatives. Secure them both. We depart for the sanctuary immediately. You won't make it out of Konoha, Naruto said, still fighting his own restraints. The moment Kakashi-sensei realizes what's happening. Your Hokage is currently dealing with an apparent outbreak of chakra fever in the eastern district. The leader cut him off. Another in the western quarter. Simultaneous security breaches at the academy and the prison. All carefully orchestrated to ensure we have ample time for our extraction. He sounded almost proud of the coordination. By the time anyone realizes you're gone, you'll be beyond reach. Sakura and Naruto were roughly pulled to their feet. additional restraints binding their ankles with enough slack to allow limited movement but prevent running. As they were forced toward the edge of the plaza where transport presumably waited, Sakura caught Naruto's eye. Despite the dire situation, there was something in his gaze that didn't match their apparent defeat, a calculating awareness that made her think he wasn't as helpless as he appeared. "I'm sorry," she mouthed silently. He gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head and mouthed back, "Trust me." Before Sakura could decipher his meaning, a flash of movement caught her attention, so fast it was barely visible. Something struck the leader from behind, a precise hit that made him stagger forward with a surprised grunt. "What?" he began, turning to face this new threat. Hinata Hyuga stood there, palm extended in the distinctive gentle fist position, her Byakugan active and focused intently on the leader. "Step away from them," she said, her quiet voice carrying unusual steel. The Divine Purge operatives reacted immediately, moving to surround this new threat. But Hinata wasn't alone. Shikamaru Nara emerged from the shadows at the edge of the plaza, his hands already forming his clan's signature technique. "Shadow Possession Jutsu," he murmured, and darkness stretched from his feet, capturing the two operatives nearest him. The leader recovered quickly, assessing the new odds. "The Hyuga vessel," he observed. "How convenient. Now we can cleanse both parts of the corruption at once." "I don't think so," came another voice, and Kakashi appeared on a nearby rooftop. Is Hokage robes fluttering in the evening breeze. "I believe you'll find leaving my village with my shinobi rather difficult." More Konoha ninja appeared, genuine ones this time, surrounding the plaza. Among them, Sakura recognized several Anbu operatives she had treated personally and knew weren't imposters. The leader of the Divine Purge made a sound that might have been laughter. "Impressive response time, Lord Sixth. But you're too late. The primary objective is already complete." Before anyone could react, he made a series of rapid hand signs, then slammed his palm against Naruto's chest. Divine Purge. Soul Fracture. Naruto's scream was unlike anything Sakura had ever heard from him, raw agony that seemed to come from the very core of his being. Crimson light erupted from his body, lsing outward in waves that rippled through the air like heat distortion. "Naruto!" Hinata cried, rushing forward only to be blocked by more operatives. The leader formed more signs, continuing the technique as Naruto writhed in his grasp. "The bond begins to break," he intoned, satisfaction evident even through the mosque's distortion. "Soon the corruption will be." He never finished the sentence. A blur of pink and red intercepted him, Sakura, who had somehow broken free of her captors in the confusion. Despite the chakra restraints still binding her wrists, she drove her shoulder into the lead. Sighed with the full force of her considerable physical strength, breaking his contact with Naruto. The interruption of the technique had an unexpected effect. The crimson energy that had been pouring from Naruto suddenly rebounded, concentrating in the space between him and Sakura. For a brief moment, they were connected by a visible thread of crimson light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Sakura felt something unprecedented, a warmth spreading through her body, starting from her chest and flowing outward along her chakra pathways. The chakra restraints on her wrist sparked and then cracked, overwhelmed by the surge of energy. "No," the Divine Purge leader howled, recognizing what was happening. "Not another vessel. The circle must not expand." But it was too late. The crimson thread solidified, and Sakura gasped as knowledge and sensation flooded into her. Naruto's emotions, his pain, his determination, all suddenly accessible to her awareness. More than that, she could feel Hinata too, a presence connected to Naruto and now, by extension, to her. The crimson bond had formed its second link. The surge of combined chakra shattered the remaining restraints on both Naruto and Sakura. Naruto staggered to his feet, his eyes now glowing with that distinctive crimson light Sakura had seen in Amaya's. "You tried to break the bond," he said, his voice overlaid with a resonant quality that hadn't been there before. "But you only made it stronger." With Sakura now linked to him, their chakra flowed between them, healing his injuries and restoring his depleted reserves. She could feel her own medical chakra being amplified and redirected through the bond, working with an efficiency she'd never experienced before. The Divine Purge leader backed away, recognizing the shift in power. "This changes nothing," he declared, though his voice lacked its former confidence. The corruption spreads, but we will cleanse it. All of it. He made a final hand sign, and white smoke erupted arrow. The remaining divine purge operatives. When it cleared seconds later, they were gone, having used some form of advanced transportation technique to escape. Kakashi and the other Konoha shinobi secured the area, checking for any remaining threats. Hinata rushed to Naruto, embracing him tightly. I felt it, she whispered. Through the bond. They were trying to destroy it. I know, Naruto replied, holding her close with one arm while reaching out to Sakura with the other. But something else happened instead. Sakura approached slowly, still processing the extraordinary sensation of being connected to both of them. The bond felt like a warm current flowing between them, carrying impressions and emotions that weren't quite thoughts but more than mere feelings. The crimson bond, she said softly. It formed with me too. Hinata's eyes widened as she sensed the new connection, feeling Sakura's presence through Naruto. After a moment of surprise, her expression softened to acceptance. I can feel you, she confirmed. It's different than with Naruto, but definitely there. Kakashi approached, his visible eye taking in the scene with characteristic perceptiveness. I believe we have much to discuss, he said mildly, though his posture suggested heightened concern. Preferably somewhere more secure than a public plaza. Naruto nodded, the crimson glow fading from his eyes. The bond remained strong in Sakura's awareness. The Divine Purge planned this whole operation just to capture me. They created diversions all over the village to tie up our forces. Indeed, Kakashi confirmed, though their information was flawed. They didn't account for Shikamaru's contingency planning or Hinata's ability to track you through your bond. How did you find us? Sakura asked, looking to Hinata and Shikamaru. I felt Naruto's distress, Hinata explained. It was intense, different from normal danger. When I told Shikamaru, he immediately contacted Lord Sixth through the secure channel. The intelligence division had already detected unusual activity patterns, Shikamaru added. Too many coincidental security incidents at once. When Hinata said Naruto was in trouble, it confirmed our suspicions that they were diversionary tactics. Kakashi gestured toward the Hokage Tower. We should continue this discussion in the secure conference room. If the Divine Purge is old enough to attempt an extraction in the heart of Konoha, we need to reevaluate our entire security protocol. As they made their way toward the tower, Sakura moved alongside Naruto and Hinata, still marveling at the new awareness the bond provided. She could sense Naruto's exhaustion beneath his determined exterior, could feel Hinata's concern and the subtle current of affection that flowed constantly between them. I can feel both of you, she said quietly. It's overwhelming, but not in a bad way. Naruto nodded. It gets easier to manage with time. At first, Hinata and I were picking up every stray thought and emotion from each other. Now it's more selective. You can kind of control what flows through the bond. Does this mean? Sakura hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. Hinata, are you okay with this? With me being connected to Naruto this way? Hinata's smile was genuine. The bond forms based on existing connections, Sakura. You and Naruto have been close for years. This just gives it a new dimension. She took Sakura's hand, squeezing gently. Besides, I can feel your intentions through the bond. There's no deception or ulterior motive, just your desire to protect someone important to you. Quote, and now we're stronger together, Naruto added. The Divine Purge tried to break my bond with Hinata, but instead, they ended up helping create a new one with you. Talk about a backfire. Despite the gravity of the situation, Sakura couldn't help but smile. Trust Naruto to find a silver lining even in the most dire circumstances. At the Hokage Tower, they were ushered immediately to the secure conference room where they had met earlier. Kakashi activated the privacy seals himself, ensuring no surveillance could penetrate the chamber. Now, he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. I believe we have new developments to discuss. Starting with this apparent second bond. Naruto explained what had happened. The ambush, his capture, and how he Divine Purge leader had attempted to sever his bond with Hinata through a technique called soul fracture. When Sakura had intervened, the disrupted energy had instead formed a new connection. It wasn't intentional, Sakura added. But it feels right, somehow. Like a natural extension of our existing relationship. Interesting, Kakashi mused. This suggests the Crimson Bond might form readily in situations of extreme stress or danger. A survival mechanism, perhaps. Shikamaru, who had been quietly analyzing the situation, spoke up. That would align with what we found in the archives earlier today. He spread several ancient scrolls on the table. These are fragments of Uzumaki clan records, preserved after the fall of Uzushiogakure. They reference the Crimson Bond as a in gift that manifests in times of great need, binding hearts already connected by fate. That matches my mother's journal, Hinata confirmed. The bond doesn't create connections where none exist. It strengthens and transforms existing bonds into something more powerful. And dangerous, apparently, Kakashi observed. The Divine Purge seems particularly motivated to prevent these bonds from forming. Their leader mentioned something about completing the circle. Did anyone understand what that meant? Sakura reached into her pocket and withdrew the crystal vial, which had somehow survived the confrontation intact. Amaya, the woman who died at the hospital, gave me this. She called it blood of the last Crimson King, said it contains memories and knowledge about the bloodline. Kakashi examined the vial without touching it. Blood memory preservation is an ancient technique, rarely used nowadays because of the risks involved. But it was once common among clans wishing to pass down secret knowledge to future generations. How do we access these memories? Naruto asked. Traditionally, blood calls to blood, Kakashi replied. As an Uzumaki, you would need to mix a drop of your blood with the preserved sample. But given the Divine Purge's fanatical opposition to this bloodline, I recommend extreme caution. We should analyze this thoroughly before attempting anything. I can work with the Medical Research Division. Sakura offered. We have secure facilities for handling potentially hazardous biological materials. Kakashi nodded. Good. But keep the circle of knowledge small, only those you personally trust. He turned to Shikamaru. What else did the archives reveal about the Crimson Bond? Fragments, mostly, Shikamaru replied. References to the Circle of Seven and the Divine Convergence. Nothing specific about what these terms actually mean. But there were warnings, dire ones, about the consequences of completing the circle improperly. 7 bonds. Naruto looked alarmed. I've already formed 2, and the Divine Purge is already trying to kill us. What happens if there are 7? We don't know, Shikamaru admitted. But the scrolls suggest the number 7 has special significance. The phrase, 7 bonds, 7 aspects, 1 convergence, appears multiple times. The leader called Hinata and me, vessels, Sakura recalled. And Amaya too, as if we're containing something for Naruto, or sharing something with him, Hinata suggested. The bond doesn't feel like we're vessels for Naruto's power, it feels like we're all connected to the same source. Drawing from it in different ways. Kakashi steepled his fingers, thinking. The village elders will need to be informed of these developments. A second Crimson Bond forming will be politically significant. Politically significant how? Naruto asked, brow furrowing. Shikamaru and Kakashi exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. The Crimson Bond appears to create connections that transcend normal relationships. Shikamaru explained carefully. From a clan perspective, especially for prominent families like the Hyuga, this has implications. Marriage implications, Kakashi clarified, seeing Naruto's confusion. The elders will view these bonds as equivalent to formal clan alliances, which traditionally are cemented through marriage. Naruto's eyes widened. But I'm already planning to marry Hinata. We haven't set a date yet, but we've talked about it. And now you've formed a bond with Sakura as well, Kakashi pointed out. From the traditional clan perspective, that creates obligations there too. Sakura felt heat rise to her cheeks. Surely the elders can't expect. I mean, we're not living in the Warring States era anymore. People don't arrange marriages based on political alliances these days. You'd be surprised, Shikamaru muttered. Clan politics still follow many ancient traditions, especially regarding bloodlines and abilities. Hinata, who had been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke. My father will expect formalization of the bond through traditional means. That's just how the Hyuga views such matters. The implications hung in the air, creating an awkward silence. Naruto looked between Hinata and Sakura, clearly struggling to process this new complication. Kakashi cleared his throat. Let's set aside the personal implications are now and focus on the immediate security concerns. The Divine Purge has demonstrated both the will and the ability to strike at the heart of Konoha. They have infiltrators within our ranks, potentially including Anbu. And they're targeting not just Naruto but anyone connected to him through this bond. We need a secure location for continued research and protection, Shikamaru suggested. Somewhere not on official records. Where we can control access completely. The Uzumaki Mask Temple, Naruto suggested. It's technically my property as the last Uzumaki in Konoha, but almost no one knows about it. And it already has ancient protection seals built into the foundation. Kakashi nodded approvingly. Good thinking. We'll establish it as your base of operations. Officially, I'll assign Crimson to diplomatic preparation for the 5-Cage Summit, a cover that will explain your frequent meetings and potential travel. What about the Divine Purge infiltrators? Sakura asked. How do we identify them? Carefully, Kakashi replied. Hinata, your Byakugan may be able to detect the subtle chakra differences Naruto described in the imposter Anbu. Work with Shikamaru to develop Tenten protocols that won't alert suspects they're being investigated. As the meeting continued, strategies were developed and assignments distributed. Throughout it all, Sakura remained acutely aware of the new connection linking her to Naruto and, by extension, to Hinata. It provided a constant undercurrent of their emotions, Naruto's determination and concern, Hinata's calm resolve tinged with worry. When the meeting finally adjourned, Kakashi held Naruto back for a moment. There's one more thing we need to discuss privately, he said, gesturing for the others to go ahead. Outside the conference room, Sakura found herself alone with Hinata as Shikamaru departed to begin implementing their security protocols. This is awkward, Sakura said finally, breaking the silence. I want you to know I never intended. I know, Hinata interrupted gently. I can feel your sincerity through the bond, remember. Her smile held no resentment. The bond formed because of your desire to protect Naruto. Just as mine formed when I was in danger. That says something important about both of us, don't you think? Sakura considered this. That we'd both do anything to keep him safe. Exactly. Hinata's expression grew serious. The Divine Purge won't stop coming for him, for us. Whatever this bond is, whatever it means for our future, we're stronger facing it together than divided by awkwardness or jealousy. The wisdom and maturity in Hinata's words struck Sakura deeply. The shy girl who had once watched Naruto from a distance had grown into a woman of remarkable strength and clarity. You're right, Sakura agreed, feeling the bond between them warm with mutual respect. Whatever comes next, we face it as a team. Inside the conference room, Naruto looked up expectantly as Kakashi closed the door, ensuring they were truly alone. There's something you should know, the Hokage said, his tone more serious than usual. Something I found in the classified archives that I didn't want to mention in front of the others yet. Naruto straightened, sensing the gravity of the moment. What is it? The last known carrier of the Crimson Bond before you wasn't Uzumaki Ashina, as most records claim. Kakashi removed a sealed scroll from his robe and placed it on the table. It was your mother, Uzumaki Kushina. Naruto stared at him in shock. My mother. But, how? Why didn't anyone tell me? Quote, because her bonds were deliberately severed and sealed away before your birth, Kakashi explained, opening the scroll to reveal text in a cipher Naruto didn't recognize. This is the personal journal of the third Hokage. In it, he records that Kushina formed 3 crimson bonds during her lifetime, with your father, with Uchiha Makoto, and with a third person whose name is redacted even in this private account. 3 bonds, Naruto whispered, trying to absorb this revelation. But why were they severed? Kakashi's expression was grave. According to this, when it was discovered Kushina was pregnant with you. The village elders became concerned. Something about the Crimson Bond interacting unpredictably with the Nine Tails chakra during childbirth. They feared catastrophic consequences if all that power became unstable at once. Quote, so they forced her to break the bonds? Naruto asked, anger rising at the thought. No, it was her choice, Kakashi corrected. To protect you, and to protect the village. The third writes that it was the most painful decision of her life, but she insisted on the sealing procedure once she understood the risks. He paused, letting Naruto process this. Sealing was performed by your father and Jiraiya together, using a technique that temporarily suppressed the Crimson Bond bloodline completely. Temporarily. Naruto caught the specific word. You mean, the suppression was meant to last until you reached adulthood, Kakashi confirmed. By then, your chakra would be developed enough to handle the bloodline's awakening, if it manifested at all. Many bloodlines skip generations or require specific triggers to activate. Naruto sat back, overwhelmed by these revelations about his parents. Does this mean, my mother's bonds, are they still out there somewhere? Could I find them? Quote, Uchiha Makoto died in the clan massacre, Kakashi reminded him gently. As for the third bond holder, as I said, the name is redacted. But given the timing of events, it's possible they're still alive. And the Divine Purge, did they hunt my mother too? The journal doesn't mention them specifically, Kakashi replied. But there are references to cultists who opposed the Uzumaki bloodlines. It's possible they're the same group, perhaps under a different name at that time. Naruto absorbed this information slowly, connecting it to what they already knew. So the Divine Purge has been after my family for generations. And now they're after me, Hinata, and Sakura. It seems so, Kakashi agreed. Which is why I'm authorizing whatever resources you need for protection and research. If the Crimson Bond is indeed awakening after being suppressed for a generation, there may be consequences none of us can anticipate. As Naruto left the conference room to rejoin Hinata and Sakura, his mind whirled with questions. His mother had formed 3 Crimson Bonds. She had sacrificed them to protect him before his birth. And now, the same bloodline was manifesting in him, creating connections that were already changing his life in profound ways. Hinata and Sakura looked up as he approached, both immediately sensing his emotional turmoil through their shared bond. What's wrong? Hinata asked, concern evident in her pale eyes. Naruto took a deep breath, then shared what Kakashi had told him about his mother. As he spoke, he felt their support flowing through the bond, steadying him. So this bloodline, it's definitely from your mother's side, Sakura mused when he finished. And it's been dormant for a generation because of the sealing procedure. Which might explain why it's awakening so powerfully now, Hinata suggested. Like a river breaking through a dam after years of pressure building up. Naruto nodded, grateful for their insights. Whatever this means, whatever's coming, I'm glad I'm not facing it alone. As if in response to his words, the bond between the 3 of them pulsed with warmth, a tangible manifestation of their connection. In that moment, despite the dangers they faced and the uncertainties ahead, Naruto felt something he hadn't experienced since the war ended, the sense that he was exactly where he needed to be. With exactly the right people beside him. The Crimson Bond had changed everything. But looking at Hinata and Sakura, feeling their presence in his awareness, Naruto couldn't bring himself to regret it. Whatever the Divine Purge might believe, this connection didn't feel like corruption. It felt like coming home. Chapter 2 End.